Why?
Because they get the attention that they want from women. It's just what it is. It's just they want attention from the women. And secondly, I would say the insecurity of knowing that they're not really in a position that they want to pretend they are. They know they ain't not in a position. Okay. So the reality is, I tell people all the time, I can go out with my mentor. She's a billionaire, like legit billionaire. So reality is, I go out with her. I'm not gonna try to keep up with her. I know where I'm at. But the reason why I can constantly climb to get to where she is, because I know where I'm at. The reality is most people don't know where they are because they pretend so long that they believe themselves. There are people that live paycheck to paycheck and they talk very arrogant about finances like they got it like that.
Right.
And they waiting for another check. And literally waiting for another check. And it's a hamster wheel, but before you can change your financial situation, you have to change your mentality about your financial situation. Because if you can't change that, then you're gonna always be consistently making the same poverty decisions that keep you stuck. And then what you're gonna do, you're gonna blame America. America never made you go out and go get a luxury car. America didn't tell you that you need a luxury bag. America don't tell you need to fly out every weekend. America, reality is you need to sacrifice for a while, put yourself in a position where your lifestyle could be your real lifestyle opposed to a temporary lifestyle. I think it's like teasing me to go on a vacation, renting a luxury room, and then gotta come back to poverty. I think it's a teaser. I don't know how people even do that.
But do you think, especially in our music, do you think the reason why it's glorified so much by regular people is because they see it glorified by celebrities? Do you see like the guys, it's the nice cars in the videos, and the nice cars get the girls, and the money get the girls, and the jewelry get the girls, and the clothes get the girls? But I'm saying, if we know that's a problem and we can identify the problem, I'm talking about it from the men's side, then why isn't there a solution? Then why continue the cycle, but then kind of looking to make blame for it?
I broke the solution because I broke that situation because my son, he's grown, and my son don't care about material things at all. And I taught him to worry about, my son worry about more stocks than he worry about sneakers and clothes, right? And that's a mentality you have to teach him. If you don't instill that mentality, the generation will repeat the same, if the next generation, in most cases, if the last generation don't teach the things that we didn't learn. Even if you learned it at a later age, the best thing to do is say, you know what, I'm gonna show you how to view this because I didn't view it. And a lot of times, all we do is complain about what we didn't do, But the reality is, if you knew better, you would have did better. Now you know better, you do better. So you can't complain about what you didn't know. You didn't know. So now let's move forward. And I think the worst parent on earth is a parent that creates that same messed up mentality that kept us stuck. And then you teach the next generation to have that same mentality. That's where the problem spews right there. It's like, damn, you're teaching the next generation the same poverty mentality, and then you wonder why we're broke. And I'm like, it's just what it is. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
You know, I was having a conversation with a guy the other day. He was like, yo, come outside. I said, what's up? He wanted to show me his BMW. And I looked at the BMW, I said, that's nice. And the reality is he works at Costco. I'm going to be honest with you. The problem is if you say this, people are going to take it as arrogant. I tell people to act your wage. We tell people to act their age, but you got to also act your wage. And the reality is, well, someone wrote a minute ago, and I want to get to that. Someone asked me, so you telling me that 9 to 5 is a form of poverty? No. Your 9 to 5 is your first investor. Your 9 to 5 is your first investor into the lifestyle that you want. So for instance, my 9 to 5 is the first payment that I receive for the hours that I'm giving them. So basically you're selling time, right? I'm selling time. So if I'm selling time in my life, that means I should be trying to buy back my time with the money the time that I'm giving. So every time I get my money, I got to literally say, you know what? Let me do something right with it. Let me break down the analogy. Let's say hypothetically me and you go to a job, right? And every time they pay us in seeds. But the only time we can eat is when we at the job, meaning we get food. So shouldn't we take some of those seeds and do what when we go home? Plant them. And the reality is that's what they should be doing with their money. They don't plant their seeds. So therefore, every time they need to eat, they got to go where? Back to work. And that's why they get stuck with this plantational mentality. And they get stuck over and over and over, repetitionally doing it. I'm like, no, sacrifice 5 years of your life. 60 months can change your whole position with discipline. But the reality is, no, I want to continue to act like I'm there for the next 60 months. And then 60 months from now, life got more expensive and you're in a worse situation than what you would have been if you would have sacrificed 60 months ago.
But do you think that there are some people, like I said, that are satisfied with their job? Not everyone in a 9 to 5. Like, I feel like they're workers and they're bosses. Like, not everyone is built for entrepreneurship. Like, there are some people that their way of planting seeds is putting into their Roth IRA, putting into their 401k. That is their way of you know, making sure that after retirement they're good. I don't think everyone has the business mentality, and that's okay. I don't think everyone has an entrepreneur mentality, because it is hard to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Everyone can't just go out there. It is a sacrifice to make, and sometimes it depends on your placement in life, where you are, if you're able to make that sacrifice. You know, like I said, by the time you do your 9 to 5, you get paid, you pay your bills, you pay into your medical, you pay into your dental, pay into your 401. Some people are good with that. They're comfortable with that. That's a comfortable life for them. They could take a few vacations. They're able to just live within their means. They're able to save a little bit of money, and they're okay with not playing a gamble, because entrepreneurship can be a gamble for us. I've had a couple of businesses. Some did well, some didn't. I'm sure you have as well. So it is a gamble. So I don't know if I can judge someone based on the fact and say yes, you are, but you're selling your time either way. Because in entrepreneurship, you got to grind too. Because if you don't work hard, you don't get paid. So either way, I feel like you're giving your time up. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You can't just sit here. Your business aren't just going to run themselves and make money. You got to step in too. So I feel like I try not to judge people based on that, because sometimes a 9 to 5 for some people, that's what's paying the bills.
No, but there's nothing wrong with a 9 to 5. But the issue with a 9 to 5 is when you don't understand how to employ your money. Everyone is not meant to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
So we automatically assume by somebody being financially free, they have to be an entrepreneur. Not necessarily true. Most people don't understand that. For instance, you take a Tesla, Google, Apple, Amazon. They are publicly traded companies. That means, therefore, you can put your money and invest into a publicly traded company. Therefore, you don't have to have a business, but you invest in successful businesses that make you money. So reality is, you teach that mentality more opposed to everyone has to be a boss. You're your boss because you're employing your money.
Right.
That's what make everyone a boss. A boss is a mentality. You don't have to have 10 businesses to talk about your boss. No, what you are is you taking your resources. You say, you know what? I'm going to put my money into Tesla for the next 10 years. I'm going to put my money into Google for the next 10 years. So therefore what?
Agreed.
Growing your money.
Agreed.
So that's what more people need to have, that understanding and that ideology, opposed to saying, oh, I need to open up a store. No, I'm just being honest with you. Most people are not good enough to have a business, because most people, if you treat your 9 to 5 like trash, because the way you practice is the way you play. Before you can become the boss, you have to act like the boss. So if you act lazy on a job, you're going to be lazy when you have your own business. The reality is, it doesn't change. When I worked every job I've ever had in my life, I've always been disciplined. I've always been on time. I've always been consistent, and I was always adamant about building it. And therefore, I've always got managerial or supervisor positions because of how I carried myself, knowing that this is just a stepping stone for the person I want to be. I tell you, every day we audition. You audition for the character that you want. Right? And when you're trying to audition, you're sitting there saying to yourself, like, you know what? I'm building myself up. So the reality is, I can't build myself up if I don't build a mentality. Think about it. A team practice, right? If they practice hard, when the game comes, what happens? They play better, right? And that's how I tell people, your first jobs are very, they're very necessary for the future person you're becoming. And if you take those jobs like trash, I ain't taking the job, it ain't enough for me. You're going to do the same thing when you get up into your next jobs.
Right.
You got to know how to behave. The worker has to think like the CEO before he becomes a CEO. He has to think like that. Otherwise, when you become the CEO, you don't become a landlord. You learn how to be a landlord before you become a landlord.
But I think a lot of times we do need to teach that. You know, I think that we don't
Block that weirdo?
We don't teach a lot of things, and we have an expectation for people to know it. I think that one of the biggest scams to me is even college. I think that you go to college, you take a lot of classes for a degree, some things you're never going to use. You know what I mean? For those of us who went, like, you're not going to use it. You're not going to use it. Or you go to college, you come out in major debt, and you still don't have a job. Or you got to take a job where you're making $30, $35, $40 an hour. A lot of people go to college, you get a bachelor's. A bachelor's means nothing anymore. They glorified that years ago. A master's is getting you in the door, but it's who you know, especially in the corporate world. Because, I mean, college will teach you how to be book smart. It doesn't really make you intelligent. It doesn't make you know how to go out there and do things, because you're not really learning anything specific to your field. Unless you're going to be a doctor, obviously. If you're in med school, you know what I mean? You're in law school, that's a difference. But you had a lot of people out here with business degrees. They ain't got no job in no business. You know what I'm saying? I went to school for business. You go to school, then I ended up doing early childhood development. Then I switched to this, then I switched to that. Like, but in all of this, you're paying money. So I feel like teaching people financial literacy and having these in schools. We need to have these in schools for our children, where they know at an early age of, like, this is what you do with your money. Letting them invest in little stocks, just the way they're introducing college classes in high school. You know what I mean? Do the same thing so our kids, those who know better, do better. You can't expect people to do what they don't know. Knowledge is power.
Agreed, but I still feel like the parents are the blame, because when you look at, you have a child who has never learned anything about finances, they get their first checks, and you allow them to do whatever the hell they want with their checks. So realistically, that parent is the problem. You know that this child knows nothing about finance,
Right.
and you expect them to just know finance. So who's the problem? The reality is, I take my son's money and hold his money for him.
Right.
And as he needs, I give to him. The reason being is because you're giving a child unlimited access to frivolous things.
Right.
And chances are, they're gonna do what? Spend money on frivolous things. So what you do is you discipline them, you teach them, and as they start maturing, you give them more access to the freedom of finance. The same way as going outside. You don't just say your kid turned 13, go out and be all you can be.
Right.
No, you give them a little later curfew, then 16, then turn back on, 18, 19. You start giving them more access to being responsible. And the reality is, if you automatically just throwing your child out and say, you know what, my son worked at McDonald's, he got his first check, and he's good. You're the problem. I'm just being fair. You're the problem because you should have said, you know what, every paycheck, I need 40, 30, 40, 50%, whatever it is you choose to say, I need to hold that. And as you need, I will give you. Otherwise, you're going to wake up with a 30-year-old child who is 30-year-old broke because you never planned them to be the 30-year-old person, especially when you have the ability to let them live for free. While they're living for free, you should be under every bit of your guidance. Every bit of your guidance as the parent and showing them how to navigate life. Otherwise, we're failing them.